Well, this was really fun for us to put this together because actually we learned a lot about each other early days because Diego has this nice diagram, early days, and so we kind of went over that part, and we actually learned a lot about each other. So it was really fun.
It was really fun. A lot harder than I thought it would be.
So thank you for the opportunity to be there and share with you. I just want to start off with a verse, one of my favorite verses throughout my life, and it's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me. When you seek me with all your heart, I will be found by you, says the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and all the places where I have driven you.
Wouldn't it be so much easier if we knew the plans from the outset, that what God had in plan for us and the path to follow. But one thing we know for sure is our future, our hope, our goal is eternal life with God. Each of us has a unique and each one of us has a unique and unrepeatable story because God's made each one of us special and unique. This is my, I'm going to start with my pilgrimage. I call it a pilgrimage because it's actually too many up and downs to just call it a path. I have even titled it From Reluctant Believer to Fully Charged Christian, and you can see that on your little sheet that I passed it along. This was actually a spreadsheet when it started at one point, and you would not believe that this is made in Excel. And I was trying just to track my life and the periods of my life and what was happening in the seven areas of my life. And it ended up being something that I thought I would share with you guys that it might be useful at some point. And this has all the periods of my life, birth, childhood, youth, adulthood, maturity. But on the top is probably the most important part is how your body, your soul, which is your heart and your mind, and your spirit relate to each other, and how you need to take care of all three of them. And in my journey, I had a pretty good, as you can see on that, these are actually batteries that you need to be charged and keep them charged. So that's why the question after us is who's charging your batteries. So you can see that in my body, for instance, is pretty simple. When I was a child, up to 2 years old, my mother did all the work and got my body in shape, and my soul with her nurturing and her care kept it at 100%. In my spirit, obviously, and this is biblical, it's shut off completely. We are spiritually dead, and we at some point need to make a decision to turn our lives around and let God turn on our spirit and have the Holy Spirit come and dwell with us. And so that's one of the things that I did not understand for a long time, that even you are baptized, because you will hear in my story in a little while, even if you are baptized as a child, you still don't have your spirit functioning. It's still zero battery charge on it. You still have it because you were created in God's image, and that part of it is the image of God, is your spirit. So it's there, but it has no juice, so to speak. Okay. So in my body and soul, I did very good when it came to the physical body, and not so good when it came to the soul side of it, heart and mind. As you can see, if you look at it, the battery charge keeps going down and down and down as I go older, to the point where around mid-20s, I had a major crisis because my batteries were basically almost gone. But let me just tell you a little bit more specific about myself. When I was asked by Dave if I would do this testimony and how I became a Christian, I did it for two main reasons. First, I thought it would be a good way to get to know each other, and we are going to open up and let you know who we are. And at some point, I hope all of you will do the same, and we'll really get to know each other. And second, considering the ups and downs and the tug-of-war path of my journey, you might feel inspired or even relieved in some sense to confirm that awakening your spirit in getting close to God is not an easy task. So it's my prayer tonight that God's Holy Spirit will speak to you, that He will open your hearts and your minds to whatever He wants you to hear. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Like Dave said, I was born in Quito, Ecuador. That's in South America, a very small country over there, about the size of Colorado. very, very small. The city, Quito, is about 10,000 feet high in the Andes, and I think you were there once, right? Dave. It's hard to breathe if you're not used to it at that altitude. But it gave me an advantage because now I can go anywhere and I have the lungs to take care of it.
Amazing.
But I was born into a traditional Catholic family, and an influential, my family had an influential place in society. My father was a prominent medical doctor and a politician, but unfortunately his busy schedule left no time for us kids. Needless to say, our relationship was strained with my father, to put it mildly or nicely. As you might suspect, I was baptized in that denomination, attended private Catholic schools run by the Salesian priests from England and Scotland, that they are known worldwide to be strict disciplinarians and outstanding educators. The outstanding educational part of it worked very well with me, but the strict disciplinarian not so much. I learned later on that I resented the authority because my father was absent, and for some reason I just transferred it to whoever was in authority. At some point, I didn't like him to start with. Anyway, I managed to graduate from high school in the top percentile of my class and came to the United States to pursue a college education around 17, 18. I don't think I was 18 yet. My journey as an immigrant to this country was not that of the typical person from an underdeveloped country with limited education, little or no money, and seeking a better life. I didn't know it at the time how privileged I was to be able to come to this country, get a higher education at one of the most prestigious business schools in the country to boot. I didn't know the University of Texas was so hard to get into. I just went in there because I was a foreign student, and they just have a certain amount of people that they receive automatically from certain countries. You just take the SAT and you're in. Well, there's people here with great averages, everything, and everything going for them that cannot get in. So I had no idea I was so privileged to be at that school. Anyway, as the time went by, this newly found freedom, the lack of accountability, no more controlling family, no more stifling society norms, no more disciplinarian priests, led me to some excesses that today I can hardly believe that it was me doing them. My career as well, as a well-educated and at this point I'm not only privileged individual, took me to high workplaces and unjustified success. This proved to be a dangerous combination. My life was filled with an insatiable need to reach for the top, watch out for number one, do it unto others before they do it unto you, and many other forms of self-satisfaction. The warp speed and dimension of my ascent in life led me to make big mistakes, powerful enemies, and contrary to reason, reach a comfortable empty space at the top. By the age 27, I was ready to have midlife crisis that most people experience when they are in their 40s and 50s. So you can see here, at age 27 in my adulthood, I reached that crisis, and that is when God came into my life. He always is at the end of your rope, leading nowhere else. So I had to look at my inner self and figure out what led me to that crisis so early in my life. So I was trying to understand the meaning of life and find something more permanently fulfilling. I started by looking back at my life, especially to my early adulthood, with its tumultuous activities. So with the help of some caring people, I realized that I had been good at taking care of my body, like I said. In my mind also, I was pretty good at what I did. But I had neglected to give my heart the attention it required as the most important part of my soul. So basically the crisis came about because I was empty in what it respect to my heart it was concerned. I had no support system, no more family or friends. I was moving too fast in life to even bother to establish a meaningful relationship. They didn't last very long, the relationships, and I understand that it was my fault. I managed to always blame somebody else. It was easier that way, but it was not. Okay, so I understood that, and I began to wonder if maybe I was missing God in my life. Some trusted friends I had claimed that maybe that was my shortcoming, and my solution will be find God, and you will be okay. You know, okay. I have been to Catholic schools for 12 years. I mean, I've been to catechism. I knew about a lot of things, but I didn't understand anything, actually, when it came to religious knowledge. So I began to wonder how to get close to God. So most of my fellow humans have let me down. I was in need of a higher power to anchor my life. Some of these things that were happening had steadily been draining my battery to, you know, the 1/3 capacity that you see there on that little spreadsheet. So regarding my spiritual life, I would be fair to say at this point that my life in my early 20s, I made a conscious decision to transition from being a member of a religious denomination. I call myself a Catholic, but I decided, okay, I'm going to be an intellectual believer. So I converted to theism, the God of the Bible. Again, my mind is the one that's working at that point, right? My heart's not there yet, but at least, like in the right side of your little sheet there, you can see the member of the denomination. I switched to an intellectual believer, and after something else that I'm going to tell you, I actually finally became a Christian. So, but at that moment, in my mind, I was a Christian. For a few years, I attended on and off many different churches and participated in their religious programs. Curiously, I started to feel a return of my childhood faith through this exercise of helping others. But it was not until a lively evening in 1978 when I was invited to an informal Wednesday night event, very much like this one, in a Baptist church in Texas, that I felt that my need to surrender my will to God. There was a very good pastor there, a good preacher that emphasized the fact that unless you surrender your will, you will never really get in touch with God or get to know the Redeemer that I had been learning so much about. So I knew him intellectually, but I didn't have no idea who he really was. So that night, I had lastly experienced the awakening of my spirit and felt the connection to God in a profound way. That was the moment of my conversion to Christianity. So at that point, I was baptized again, as a child being the first time, so this was my second baptism, and I felt that I can finally call myself a Christian without having to pretend in my mind that I believed. The rest of the day is history, but now with occasional periods of going back to my old ways. I have for more than 40 years dedicated my life to serve the work of God in the kingdom of man. I was actively involved in establishing and attended a Hispanic theological seminary in Los Angeles, dedicated to the formation of Hispanic pastors. My gift of leadership and administration served me well, and the seminary did very well during the 3 years I spent there. At the helm of the seminary, I was the administrator of it. As part of the deal, I was able to take as many classes as I wanted for free. How can you pass that out? So, surprisingly, I also did very well as a student. When I left to accept a job in a corporate world again with significant higher pay and benefits and everything else, everyone felt like that I had missed my calling. And now, in retrospect, I believe they were right. But God is faithful and with us, and even if we deviate from His path, He's still with us. I've led, I'm just telling you a little bit of the things that I've done, I guess. I've led many Bible study groups as part of the leadership team. I have helped many churches in different capacities to achieve their lofty goals. I led a divorce care program for 10 years that positively affected more than 400 people. When we started looking back, I said, how many people have come through our classes? It was more than 400 people that had gone by. And when you know, divorce destroys people. They're emotionally in a crazy time. I think there's a book called The Crazy Time. And we picked them up from there, and then when they left 13 weeks later, they were completely different people. It was an amazing ministry, and I was fortunate to be able to carry that thing for about 10 years.
Diego, is that the divorce recovery workshop you were
Yes,
talking about?
that's what, oh, sorry. You have to forgive me, you know, English is my second language. So she's still working so I can not massacre English when I speak. And I help her not massacre Spanish. So we're in the same way. It's in the same way. Okay. Well, my professional career turned into a rewarding missionary work of lifting Hispanic community in Sacramento to higher standards of living, helping them start new businesses, creating employment opportunities, and teaching them how to better manage their personal finances. I taught classes for these people for 5 years. It's called it's Smart Money, and it's created by the FDIC. It's a program, a FDIC program, to get people from zero to more or less functioning in the American financial system. So that was super rewarding.
Can I just say something? So for every year, they would graduate the students from this class, and it was very, very basic class. I mean, many people don't, there were people who didn't even know how to have a checking account or a savings account. And the people would come to this graduation ceremony so proud, and I would just be in tears because the people were so humble. Stuff that we take for granted was just a huge success for them, and Diego was such a wonderful part of that community. I mean, I'm in tears now just thinking about it. Just humble people, how grateful, how many people there are out there in the world that just really need help, and how he's been able, there's so many needs out there, and that's one of his needs that he's been really worked on for many, many decades.
Yeah, I cannot complain how good God has been with me. Allow me to do all these things. So my relationship with Debbie acquired also a new meaning. I love supporting her and her amazing journey of medical missions around the world. I think God put us together in the same path for a purpose. Debbie going down to South America in her missions like you're going to hear, and me coming up north to the U.S.
That was fun when we were doing this, because we were comparing years, and he was coming to the U.S. and I was flying to South America, and then he was coming back, and we didn't realize that we're just going back and forth between two different continents.
Yeah. Well, for some reason, we met each other, and we met each other doing God's work. You'll tell him a little bit more about how we met. By the way, we still have the language problems that we were talking about, and I have to tell her, I do a lot of reading, and I know the words. I've never heard them being pronounced, so I have no idea how they pronounce it. So I said, how do you pronounce this? Okay, anyway, I try to use simple language because I don't know how to pronounce the funny words or the difficult words. So finally, I realized the most rewarding thing in life is to give our time and effort in the service of the least of us. The intimate connection of our spirit to God's Holy Spirit is what produces what the Apostle Paul says, the fruits of the Spirit. I hope each one of us can be loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, generous, faithful, gentle to each other, so we can be known truly as a spiritual church. I'm going to leave you with Debbie, and then I'll pick up at the end a little bit to finalize the...
Just a quick
I
question.
don't know if you want to take a break before I...
Did I worry, man?
No, okay. I'll worry you out.
Well, before we leave Diego in this moment, I just wanted to ask, how did you find Brentwood Community United Methodist?
Oh, I was going to leave that for the end.
Yeah, he's going to talk.
I'll talk about it later, okay.
Yeah.
So Diego grew up on the other side of the world in an exotic country and a life of political. His father, very political, diplomatic family. And anyway, by contrast, I'm a local girl. I grew up in Livermore. Polly and I were talking. Her sister and I think we went to, your sister and I went kindergarten to high school together. So I just grew up in a humble middle class home in Livermore. My father was an engineer at Sandia. My mom was a nurse. Our family's Catholic. We went to church every Sunday. I went to catechism classes. And then in high school, I went to Granada High School. Is that where you went to high school? Oh, look at this. We're learning about each other. And in high school, I was a second clarinetist in the orchestra, and on either side of me sat two people who were really different from all the other kids in high school. They seemed so happy and calm, and they were kind and gentle and caring, and they said they were Christians. And they didn't seem to be experiencing all that emotional turmoil of high school. I know now that they were exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit that Diego just mentioned. They had something really different that I wanted too. They started talking to me about having a personal relationship with God, and at the very same time that the two Christians were talking to me at orchestra, I took a catechism class through the local parish, St. Charles Borromeo, and my catechism teacher was a born-again charismatic Catholic. The charismatic movement was very popular in the Catholic Church in the 70s, and he was really an on-fire Christian. So through my relationship with them, my faith was ignited, and I recommitted my life to God. I started reading my Bible and praying. I spent my high school years in a community of believers. I was active in the campus Christian ministries, downtown ministries, and I became very ecumenical. And I was comfortable going to the Catholic Church or going to a Protestant church. And this explains how I've been kind of able to move easily between different churches, from Protestant and Catholic churches. But my roots remain in the Catholic faith. In the summer between high school and college, my uncle, who was a missionary Catholic priest in South America, came to visit us in Livermore. And I'm sure all of us can think of someone who we have met in our lives that has dramatically changed the course of everything, our whole trajectory. My uncle was that person for me. Every 2 to 3 years, he came to the United States to do mission appeals. And he would always come to the West Coast, and he'd come to Livermore and say masses at the churches in Livermore. And from the time I was a little girl, I was just absolutely enthralled with his mission stories. He had the most amazing stories. And to this day, 50 years later, my family, we still talk about the stories. Remember Father Bob, that story he told us? His sermons really, really resonated with me. And from the time I was in grade school, I wanted to be a missionary. I knew one day I was going to be a missionary. So right after high school, I went to San Jose State, but I was really restless, wanting to do more. So I decided to take a break after my sophomore year. I still had that mission desire burning within me. I wrote to my uncle in South America and asked if I could come down and volunteer in some capacity with a mission there, and he replied yes. And when he returned on his leave to the States, he swung by California and picked me up, and we flew down to South America. He took me to the Redemptorist mission on the border of Paraguay and Brazil. I was in a rough border town called Pedro Juan Caballero, and what they called the Green Hell. It was like the Wild West. Wood sidewalks, dirt roads, everybody wore guns, gunfights on the streets. It was a wild, wild West town. My assignment was to work in a clinic run by Franciscan nuns called Clinica San Lucas. Things didn't get off on a very good foot. They thought they were getting a nurse. I wasn't a nurse. I was a social worker. I had just been a nursing assistant in a hospital. I worked at Valley Memorial, nursing assistant at Valley Memorial. I was not a nurse. So there was a little disappointment there. And I thought my uncle would be around to help me assimilate, but he was 250 miles away in the capital city. I lived with a local family. I had wanted to be a missionary, but I totally skipped the part that takes preparation to do that. I was so unprepared. First of all, I was all alone. I was only 20 years old, and you always go out in pairs, out on missions. I had never traveled, never been on a plane, didn't speak the language. Actually, there's 3 languages. They were trilingual on the border: Guarani, Portuguese, and Spanish. I didn't speak any of them. Had no training, cross-cultural experience, and no cultural sensitivity. I was a perfect ugly American. I was so embarrassed. I felt like I was at the end of the world in absolute exile. I was miserable. I wanted to leave, but my uncle wouldn't let me because the church had supported me. So my way out was not what I expected. I got sick, really sick after 6 months. And with the help of the American Embassy, they just shipped me out on the first brand of plane out of the country. So it took me months to recover from my illness, and I kept asking God, why all that happened to me? God, I trusted you, and that didn't turn out at all what I expected. But don't most of us ask why when things don't quite go according to our plan? We put conditions and expectations on God. I was very young in my faith. I was only 20, as I said. We think, I'll trust you, God, as long as I know why. We try to control, right? As a mature Christian, I now know trust is not trust if I need to understand before I trust. I'll say that again. Trust is not trust if I need to understand before I trust. That is a hard lesson I have learned throughout the rest of my life experiences. Anyway, I felt like a failure, or so I thought for many, many years. So I went back to college and finished up my last 2 years at Sac State with a degree in social work. I had a couple of years to think about my experiences in South America and learn from what I did wrong. You got to be prepared when you go to the mission field. I needed to reconcile that sense of failure and defeat. I prayed for another chance to return, and complete my mission to serve. I prayed for a way I could make a contribution to help others and to help the church. The answer came in a letter from a colleague of my uncle's who was in the capital city of Asunción in Paraguay. He asked if I would be willing to learn everything I could about a new method of natural family planning and to commit to come to Paraguay for a year. He needed someone to study natural family planning and gather materials in Spanish and come to Paraguay and teach the technical part of how to practice natural family planning. Well, I didn't know anything about it. I was a young single girl taking birth control. I don't know anything about that, but I felt it was a call. So, and I asked a friend who graduated with me in social work to be my mission partner. She agreed, and I took all classes over here in Walnut Creek and Concord for a year, trying to learn everything I can, gathering all the materials I could. So when I got to Paraguay, it turns out we were part of a team. I was part of a team with a priest, a nun, a Paraguayan doctor under the auspices of the Bcumc Conference of Paraguay. We traveled all over the country giving conferences and courses in natural family planning. I even traveled some into northern Argentina and to Brazil. And to this day, that year in Paraguay has been the absolutely most wonderful year of my life. I could not believe, from utter disaster to the most wonderful time. God really, really, really blessed me. Everything opposite of my first experience. And I'm very proud to learn those first teachers I worked with in the courses are going strong to this day. So after my year in Latin America, I decided I wanted to be a nurse, not a social worker. So in 1984, I graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Sac State. I got a job working full-time Sutter Health in Sacramento. I started working on the maternal newborn unit, and that's where I stayed till my retirement 35 years later. When I first started working as a nurse, I was attending a church there in Sacramento, and there were some dentists there, and they were part of an organization called Christian Medical and Dental Association, and they work on campuses, medical campuses all over the United States, and they sponsor 2-week mission teams, various places all over the world. So my new friends, they talked me into going on a short-term mission team with them to the country of Honduras in 1986. It was a big group of people from all over the U.S., and somehow I was selected to be on a small team to go out to the jungle, and on a surgical team, and I protested. But my friends, I want to be with my friends. I don't want to go on that team. I don't want to be on the surgical team. But they said, that's where you're going. And I did that many, many times on missions, but every time I resisted, and I went, and I would always have the most wonderful, wonderful experience. So I don't resist anymore when they say you're going to go someplace, and I'll go, no, I can't. You can't. So anyway, so it was the most amazing experience. So it was 2 surgeons, an anesthesiologist, 3 RNs, and a tech, 8 of us, and we went way out into the bush, the jungle, and we set up an operating room, a recovery room, and a post-op area. And I was the nurse in charge of post-op. And my post-op was a shed and dirt floor, outhouse, no electricity. My biggest expense on the trip was buying candles at the local store to put at the head of the bed so I could round at night. I took care of the patients 24/7. So after that experience, it was amazing the work we did providing surgeries to people who would never, ever have an opportunity for that medical treatment. So from then on, I found my calling in short-term medical missions. My experience living in Latin America, the good and the bad, had perfectly prepped me for the work of short-term mission. Every year from 1986 to 2019, with the exception of a few years, I used my vacation time at the hospital to serve on short-term medical mission teams all over the world. And I've had the most amazing experiences. Africa, the Congo, Papua New Guinea, the highlands of Papua New Guinea, but I'm mostly focused on Spanish-speaking countries to use my language skills so I can communicate. An experience is so much richer when you're able to communicate with the people. So I mostly went to Dominican Republic, Central and South America. I would live for my next mission because, to use Diego's analogy, it really, really charged my batteries going on mission trips. I came home with so much more confidence and faith. My mission philosophy was to just show up, because every time I ended up doing something, I would have said, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. That's not me. You do what you have to do. How do you know where you are, where God wants you to be? You become energized when you are using your gifts, not drained. Interestingly, my favorite country to serve was in Ecuador. I served on many teams there, and that's how Diego and I connected. I told you I'm very ecumenical. I was attending a Protestant church in Sacramento area because they had a great pastor teaching team there. It was a great class. I attended for years, and some Sundays the class would go in a group out to lunch, much like you guys go out to Dad's Cafe after the services here. So one Sunday after Sunday school, a group of us went out to a little cafe, and I was seated at a table with a group, and next to me was Diego. So he mentioned he was from Ecuador. I said, oh, I've been to Ecuador, and started talking to the places I had been. And I'd been to more places in the country. He had. We even knew some common people, and he knew the HCJB, the organization, that mission organization that I work with down there. Diego was a leader of the Sunday school class. He was very well liked and respected, and I could see he was a missionary of a different kind. While I was a medical mission, with my charism being mercy, he was a missionary to poor Hispanics who really wanted to pull themselves up by their bootstraps to succeed in the U.S. and to get their businesses going. And using his gifts of leadership and administration, he's been able to help many, many people. Many people owe their success to him. He would encourage them, give them the courage. Yes, you can start your business. You can do it. And now some of his clients are very, very, very successful people. So he's the business nonprofit missionary, and I'm the medical missionary. We support and we respect each other's apostolate or calling. At times they overlap. I was going on a medical team every year to Latin America when I met Diego. And Diego really became a partner with me in my mission. While not physically going on missions together, he provided a lot of technical support. And as my mission suddenly went to a whole new, unexpected level. My uncle that I mentioned served in Paraguay his whole entire life, 50 years. He built churches and schools all over the country of Paraguay. His last project was to build a hospital where the poor could receive medical care. He was American Embassy chaplain, and he'd raised a lot of money from the expat community for the endeavor. But he got sick, and I had to coordinate with his order and his superiors to come back to the United States to be hospitalized. And he died in 2010. After he died, his superior called me and said, you know, your uncle had a lot of money. Even though priests take a vow of poverty, he had a lot of money. And I said that was to build a hospital. And he asked me if the money could go to the general fund of the order. And I said, well, everybody gave that money in good faith that it would go to help the poor of the Paraguay in a healthcare capacity. Is there any project that might meet that criteria? So he got back to me. The superior called me several days later and said there was a project that might meet the criteria. He said there was a hospital out on the border that needed money to build an intensive care unit to modernize the hospital and meet the needs of the area. I asked where it was. He said it was in Pedro Juan Caballero, which is the town that I had been those many years ago. I asked the name of the hospital, and he said it was Clínica San Lucas. Even to this right now, I just get chills. It's just such amazing. I couldn't believe it was the same clinic I had volunteered in those many years ago and had gotten sick. I approved the project. Diego was really instrumental in helping with communications because we were communicating with, bishops in Paraguay and officials. And to make a long story short, 6 months later, the organization flew me to Paraguay, and I went back to that little town that had now become a huge city. And I dedicated the wing of the hospital. There were ceremonies, speeches. Diego helped me write all the speeches I had to give and the press releases and everything. And there's a plaque of my uncle at the entrance of the ICU wing, and it's just amazing because that expanded hospital will now save many, many lives and change many lives. And I had left 33 years before without even being able to say goodbye to people. I just got whisked out of the country, and it was amazing. People heard I was in town. They came to see me. It was an amazing healing experience. My other favorite verse of the Bible is Romans 8:28. We know that in everything God works for good with those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. But know this, even when you stray from the path, God is with you. That difficult experience I couldn't make sense of for so long came full circle to bear fruit, and there was healing. In 2010, I started going on medical teams to Honduras with a group of medical people and UC Davis med students. Starting in 2010, we would take about 10% of the first year med students down to Honduras. I became a part of that core team. And every year I had to give, they always ask me, because they think I speak great Spanish, I don't, they'd always ask me to give a devotion. So I couldn't have done it. He wrote half my devotions for me, thank you. And they thought my Spanish was really great, but it's really all Diego. And anyway, I went with them every year, and then COVID hit. It was just a disaster. 2020, COVID hit. Our medical bags were all packed. I was always in charge of the eye clinic, and we had everything ready to go. COVID hit, and we canceled that trip, and we haven't been able to go back. So during my mission hiatus, I started a new program through the Diocese of Sacramento called the Lay Mission Project. It's a 3-year program sponsored by the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology in the Bay Area. I finished the program last year. I'm now part of the core team for the next cohort that just started last fall. So to support the new group of students, we give conferences. We're getting ready to do another conference coming up next month, and I'll be helping to mentor some of the people in this upcoming class. And one of the things the program really focuses on is finding our charisms. And a charism is a special gift we're given to serve others when the Holy Spirit comes into our life. But that's a whole other talk. During the time I was in the program, there were some deaths in my family, and I find myself in charge of a large trust that we're trying to manage. And through uncontrollable and unanticipated life experiences, I suddenly find myself on a new mission, a new path. God continues to use our gifts to serve in whatever circumstances we find ourselves. I do hope to get back to doing medical teams someday. And our goal is to someday actually be able to go on a medical mission team together. Diego, you would be great. And we'd love to be able to go to Ecuador and combine mission and visiting his family there. We challenge you to identify your special gift God has apportioned to you. How have you used them to serve one another, and find what charges your battery? In that, you will find a true path to God.
Well,
So, he's got more.
To answer,
Those two related?
we're trying. To answer Dave's question, we have been in the process of moving from Sacramento, where we've been for the last 23 years, to the Bay Area, and more specifically to the Delta area, where we have a house. The transition is not complete, but we're still working at it, and we hope we will be able to be here all the time. But at some point, we were just sitting around and looking at the newspaper, the press, and thinking, we need to find a church. And me specifically, I need to find a mission, because I've always been doing something for somebody else, and I was isolated from the world for the first time, and I said, nah, I don't think I can stand it. So it was a little advertising or call for help from Hope House. They said, we need volunteers. I go, oh, this sounds like a really interesting thing, because I had done in LA. In LA we had a ministry called The Crossings that we actually prepare hot food for the homeless. And I did that for several years, and I go, well, maybe something similar. I would love to check it out. Well, that was 2 years ago, and I'm still there, and I absolutely love it. I think it's a fantastic ministry that we just need to keep it going. Like somebody said this morning, I think it was
Katie.
Yeah, Katie, we served 127 people. When I started, big day was 45. I said, oh, we did 45. Oh, we did 57. And I go, wow, 57, that's a lot. It was 127 last Monday, and we couldn't even stop to take a breath. We were going to be shallow breaths because not enough time for a deep breath. It was an incredible experience. Like you say, we went to lunch with Jerry afterwards, and you called, and we were talking, and said, well, you guys feel like you're so energized. What happened?
It was really funny. I had called Diego about something, and you could hear the buzzing at the table, and Jerry even took the phone from Diego, and he's talking, we had 127, and I got off the phone, I thought, man, that is energy, charism, their batteries are full, and that's how you can tell that you're on God's path and you're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's about all we have. Thank you for listening. It's getting kind of late, but I'd like to go over this with anybody individually that wants to go over this. I thought it was very interesting. There's some theological truths here, and maybe a path for people to find out where their batteries are faltering. Okay. Thanks. Very good.
Well, thanks very much. You know, Pastor and Heidi and I meet every month, and we try to come up with creative ideas where we can help lead this congregation. And I'm not sure who, well, we both said we wanted, or all of us said we want to do another Sunday Night Live. You know, we've had some of these that have been well received, and we've tried to figure out what can we do that's a little bit different. And then we decided to challenge Diego, and he invited Debbie. And so thank you for sharing with us. You know, all of us as Christians look for ways we can accept God's call. It might not be as big a call as going on a medical mission to South America, but we all seek a call, and we try to hear what he says to us. And of course, Diego and Debbie have shared many things that they've found in their lives. So hopefully you found this program entertaining and the food was good. Thanks, Heidi, for planning and going out and bringing everything in. I helped her put it in the oven, but you can see it all work. So is there anything anybody wants to ask or comment of Diego and Debbie? We let them get away from the microphone, but you know, I can hand it to them if you have a burning question. I know that Michael Ann, you've been on a mission trip. Is there anybody else in the room that's gone on a medical mission trip besides Michael Ann?
It's a wonderful experience. I went to Guatemala.
Yeah.
And it was outstanding.
I would just say that, you know, you don't have to be a medical person to go on, even though it says, you know, it's a medical mission team, because there actually are so many other roles that people can do on a team. We need lots of, everybody has an important role, from helping registration, crowd control. You could help in a pharmacy, packaging meds, and there's so many things to do. So don't think you have to be a medical person to go on a medical mission team. Probably you need about half. You need a lot of support, and everybody is important. Every single person on a team.
Mine was a medical mission. It was yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I remember that which just struck me as being something that I just will never forget is that the people in Guatemala burn the leaves of the trees, the coffee trees and all the trees that they grow there, and they burn that in their homes to cook.
Provide fuel for cooking
heat.
from the plant leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people that are sick with chronic pulmonary disease.
Right, and then a lot of medical teams. A lot of what we treat is children falling into the cooking fires. When you cook on carbon over, you know, on the ground, you know, we have a lot of pediatric cases and burns, and yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll have another Sunday Night Live soon. We don't know what the subject will be, but we'll try to find something interesting.
This was great. Thank you.